Here we are, riffing while black. I'm Dr. Kazika Prince, and you may or may not be able to see Dr. Lawrence James today.
We ain't so
What's up,
sure,
man?
man. I'm good. I'm good. I'm like, this technology piece though. I'm like, what is going on? Like, so
I
the
don't know what
world,
to
the
say
world
about
may
this.
be saying it don't need to see me today.
Well,
There may be some truth in that.
well, this might be our symbolic blackout for all the bull that's going on.
Man, it's high. It's high.
Well, we have I think, some interesting and hot topics to talk about today. I'm not sure if we're gonna get to all of them, but we're gonna try our
We're gonna
best.
try.
So number one, we have trad wife culture. For those gonna make that I don't know what that is. That's basically people who've chosen to live a traditional life, and it's kind of something that's been increasing over the last several years. But a lot of people have a lot of opinions about the trad wife and what they represent. Then we got why high performers quietly leave organizations. It's something that we definitely saw before and during the pandemic, but it's something that's still kind of happening today. Folks just kind of quietly leave, despite doing really well in the organization. And then uh, how fear reshaped workplace conversations. And as I'm thinking out loud with the Lawrence, I'm thinking
Hmm.
maybe pick between one of those two, because the next one I think is going to take a lot of our energy, and that's Stephen A. Smith. He came out earlier this week or last week talking about how all black people need to vote Republican, and folks have been having a bit of a reaction to him
Hmm.
for good reason. And last but not least, our side eye, and this has to do with the roast of Kevin Hart that's on Netflix. And I actually, okay, I'm not gonna go into it too much, but the thing is almost 3 hours long, and they roasting this fool, but they're doing the most racist nonsense
Hmm.
in this show, and so folks are having a reaction to that. So I got some side eye. I'm not sure if it's going to be for Kevin Hart or some of them white comedians, but
Right. Exactly.
we gonna go 10 toes deep on that one later on. But before we get started, I want to get us in one of our djembe cards here,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna have you go first, because I think I'll be going first sometimes, and I'll be forgetting to give my brother some time. Here we go. Listen to this one. Actions I'm taking to create more fairness and justice are blank and blank. Actions I'm
Actions
taking
I'm
to create
taking.
more fairness and justice are blank and blank.
Actions I'm taking to create more fairness. And I think I say the same thing every time. One, I think the first actions I'm taking are to actually have a voice in conversation, speak up and not be silent, call call truth when I hear it, call BS when I hear it.
Mm, mm,
And I honestly, the other one is super simple. Being me, regardless of the situation or circumstance that I find myself in. We previously had talked about this idea of code switching, which is a term I always say I hate with a passion, and don't believe in. But you know, uh, to the degree that folks do code switch, I try not to do that. I try to show up as Lawrence, no matter what the environment is. If that's all black folks, if that's white folks, if that's anything in between, just being my authentic self as much as I can. I mean, that's the ways I'm trying to fight. So how about you?
For me, showing up, trying to create that fairness and justice. I'll be honest. It's on to some maybe a little more practical. It's like the relationships I have with people, having
Mm,
that sense of open, transparent conversation, keeping it real, talking about what's really going on with us, and making room for that kind of opportunity to be real. Because it's so easy to kind of gloss over what's going on. How you doing? "Oh, I'm good. I'm living my best
hmm.
life." No, you're not. And so having that sense, but also, I think another way I think I try to is so another way of, I guess, keeping it real, but being very much in the sense of keeping justice front of mind, you know?
Mm,
Because it's easy to kind of like get overwhelmed with what's all going
yeah.
on and all the things you feel like you can't do anything. But justice is something that we do in our day-to-day life and what we do to one another and how we treat one another.
Mm,
And so for me, there are the bigger issues, don't get me wrong, policies and laws, but there's a justice that we try to create in just the relationships we have with the people
yeah.
around us. So it may be two sides of the same coin, but that's kind of how I try to, personal relationships. And for me, I'll be honest, the sense of justice is like I have an event coming up next Tuesday called Plates and Perspectives, where we actually go, we eat
What you cook?
really
Wait, wait,
delicious.
wait, 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 wait. What you cooking? Let's get to the real black. Let's get to the real black people part of this conversation. What you making?
Well, good thing is I have a chef. Her name is Erin Nelson, and she
All
is
right, Aaron.
doing the whole shebang for us. And
Okay,
she asked me to choose from different options,
okay.
and I chose the Mediterranean option.
I love me some Mediterranean food now.
Yes, it's gonna
You
be
got
lit.
some tzatziki and some feta cheese on some salad and stuff.
Yes, yes. So it's gonna be delicious. And then
Okay,
afterwards, we're gonna go into the gym bake experience with everyone, and
nice,
we're expecting 50 to 60 people to show up. So it's gonna be
sweet.
good. But that's gonna be next Tuesday. So that creates a sense of
So if
justice.
you're in Austin next Tuesday, come on out.
Come
Is that
on
what you're
through.
telling me? Come, okay, okay.
May
Get you
19th. We
get
start at six
get you
o'clock.
6 o'clock. Get you some Mediterranean food. What's the location, just in case?
St. Austin, a Catholic church on
Okay.
Guadalupe Road in Austin, Texas.
All right now.
Yeah.
You heard it
So
here first.
hopefully not the last.
Mm.
But cool. But we got our first topic for today, bruh. And I don't know. Part of me just wants to go straight into Stephen Ace first because he
Hey
got
man,
me lit a little bit.
you know what? You free. You free. You're a black man. You free. You can do whatever you want to do. So if you feeling Stephen A, let's roll with Stephen A and call it what it is.
Well, you tell me what you've heard so far because I'm curious what you've heard on the street.
On the streets, well, on the streets, here's what I've been hearing. One, so him and what's my man from the Celtics, Mr. Brown? Why am I blanking on this first name?
Oh, the brother, yeah,
Yeah,
he used to have braids. Now he cut it
Jalen,
off.
Jalen
Yeah.
Brown, Jalen Brown. They've been beefing because Stephen A went at Jalen talking about you lost in the first round of playoffs, so you can't say this is your best season, blah blah blah. And I think it played into, and Stephen came back basically like, you know what? Why don't both of us shut up? You come off the air and I'm gonna stop doing streaming live. So, and I thought the world would be so much better if Stephen A shut the fuck up and never said nothing about nothing ever again. Stephen A, for me, is in some ways the worst black buffoon media because, and there are lots of them, and I have a particular dislike for many black folks who do sports media because they cater to whiteness so much in everything that they do and everything that they say. But then you're going to delve into stuff like politics. And it's like, one, I ain't going to say stay in your lane because you got a right to have an opinion about whatever it is.
Hmm.
That, as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of your human right. You can talk whatever. I would like you, however, to know something about what you're talking about.
Know something?
A little something. And Stephen A, I think in some ways he's kind of the worst of black men. I said it. I said it. He is the worst of black men. And it reminds me of all the stuff that brothers were saying about Kamala Harris coming into the election. Bunch of BS that wasn't really based in fact. I heard she did blah 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 woo woo woo. And the Democrat Party ain't shit and they ain't never looked out for black people and woo woo woo. And so don't vote ignorant or go vote for Donald Trump. Double ignorant. And Stephen A is falling into that same trap and I think it's insane to me, KP. Because I don't get it. It's just insane. Because
Well,
the Democrat Party isn't perfect, and it is not by any stretch of the imagination. You want to say, go vote for the other side. But the other side doesn't share any of your values or beliefs, actively works against you, a la the Supreme Court and the civil rights decimation last week. And you go vote for that? Oh, and by the way, the policies are shit and don't work. And by the way, Mr. Trump also, I'm gonna get it all out and then I'm gonna be done. And Mr. Trump has also decimated the federal workforce, who is largely what? Black people,
yeah.
right? So You Stephen A. are gonna go tell me, well, I'm an old black man, but you gonna tell young black folks to go vote for everything that is against their self-interest. That's the definition of insanity. And why anybody who looks like me or you, male or female, will listen to this buffoon is beyond the pale to me. Okay, I'm done. I
It's
feel
all
I
right.
feel
It's all right.
almost I feel almost purged. Almost. I
You
still
gotta
got a little bit more heat, but I feel almost purged.
let it all out.
Right.
Well, I'm gonna do my best impression here. Dr. Lawrence James, you trying to tell me that a black man can't have an opinion and tell black folks to vote Republican if it's in the best interest? I mean, that's the best I got.
Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. You got to elevate the level of buffoonery, though, as you say it. I'm like,
You know, I need to have
and
my
and and
hairline.
exactly, exactly. That's what's wrong with that brother. His hairline has receded so far. I think they took a couple of that whole frontal lobe was decimated when his hair left and
It was
receded.
exposed.
It was exposed, man. It got burnt up
Too
because
much
I'm like,
radiation.
yeah, right, man, you ain't thinking straight. I'm like, that minoxidil or whatever it is that you're putting on trying to regrow that hair, it clearly done seeped into the frontal lobe, and it's eating it away.
I'm disappointed, and I've watched other commentators and other folks, influencers out there talking about it. The thing that comes out is like he's over there saying, and basically what he's trying to do is get us to return to a time pre-civil rights when black folks did kind of vote Republican or Democrat,
Hmm.
depending on the circumstances,
Right.
because they were both horrendous organizations. And I think people will make the argument today that both organizations are horrendous, and so it kind of doesn't matter. I'm not of that opinion. One, I see there's more black and brown and women who are in positions of influence and power and resources in the Democratic Party. When I think about the things that they stand up for and the policies that they work towards, meet the needs of many black and brown and low income folks. And so to me, it's not the 1950s where you have organizations that seem in many ways very much alike more than different. You have two organizations that are very different that are very problematic and still have embedded the legacy of white supremacy and a DNA of racism that's kind of baked in there. But
Hmm.
there's still organizations that are different in a lot of different ways because of the friends and family members and cousins and associates that who are part of the same organization called Democratic Party. And so I have friends who are also Republicans, but the consistent theme I see with folks who are part of that community is, hey, I'm going to pause 1 second. All right. I should have put a do not disturb sign up on my,
Right.
on my gardener just shows up. He's like, oh, we're going to be working out here. I'm like, yeah, I know, bro. Do you?
You're like, you're right.
But,
You're here every week.
but just to finish my thought, man, it's just, I feel like what we have here is a man who's kind of just, like you said, out there kind of being a buffoon, saying whatever seems to be attractive. And I think that's been my
Mhm.
frustration with Stephen A. and with other folks like him, that his audience is not us. His audience has always been to appeal to them and their
Yes.
worst instincts and impulses,
Hmm.
to grab their attention.
Yes.
And I think, and when you're doing that, you're missing an opportunity to really speak to us in a way, and then inviting other people to the cookout. But instead, he's like, I'm really not concerned about what y'all think. I'm gonna appeal because this is where I get my, my paycheck from. This is where
That's
because
for
that's
them
the thing.
dollars.
That's where his money's coming from.
That's right.
And I don't know. I just feel like that's a sacrifice I'm just not willing to make, and that he seems to have made the sacrifice or whatever this choice a
Yeah.
long time ago. And so I
I think
think,
that's. Go ahead.
no, I was just saying. So I think he's looking for more and more provocative things to say like this to appeal to them. And my concern is this: is that it's not going to last very long. There's how many black folks have we known over the years who've had that strategy, and eventually they just fall by the wayside. And it's like OJ. OJ didn't worry
Hmm.
about us until he needed us, and then all
Until
of a
they
sudden
needed
he's
us.
like, "I'm black too,"
I'm black. Right.
and so I'm too through with him. And I'm not. This is not about whether you should vote Republican or not. It's him trying to appeal to his electorate, his audience of mostly white folks, and sound somehow appealing to them. And this is the rough part. Then I got white folks coming to me and say, well, Stephen A. says this. I'm like, how you gonna use him as an example?
But
He's
that's
not
what
an
they
example.
always do. But that's what they always do. And I think that actually is one of the underlying problems with what Stephen A and folks like him do, which is he's got this platform that he utilizes, frankly, to make him more money, whatever. That's a very American thing to do. Uh, but it legitimizes a insane, unhelpful thought process and belief system for black and brown folks that then pushes you, me, and other folks to have to answer as if any of us gave a flying flip what Stephen A said to what he said, as if he's some kind of icon in the black community that we're all like, wow, it's like Stephen A is not fucking Dr. Martin Luther King or Malcolm X by any stretch of the imagination, right? So why is anybody? And I ask this question to young people all the time. I was like, why are you listening to him?
Are we listening to him? Why does he get any kind of I mean, on occasion, I find him funny when he goes after the Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys,
Right.
and talks about how bad they are, and I'm like, "Well, I kinda agree with you there." But outside of that, I'm trying to figure out what is it about Stephen A. that seems to be so attractive to people that they even give him the time of day?
I think it's the tomfoolery. I mean, it's the hyperbolic nature of what he does and what he says, because it is a caricature. And I think people enjoy that. And that seems to be a lot of the folks who make it, in sports talk radio, on sports television these days. That's sort of the brand. You can't have somebody like a Ryan Clark who is super bright, super thoughtful, in his case, really knows football, thinks, and is able to clearly articulate a viewpoint. And I'll be honest, 90% of the time, I actually agree with Ryan Clark. Every once in a while, I'm like, not so much. But even when I disagree with him, and maybe this is the biggest difference with somebody like Stephen A., even if I disagree with Ryan Clark, he has laid out a cogent argument for why he stands for what he stands for that I can choose to agree with or disagree with. But I get where he's come from. Stephen A just says some weird platitude that you're like, okay, but what's the substance behind how you got to where you got to? And there is none. You just go back to the second platitude five more times. And it's like, that's not helpful. And again, it makes me believe your interest is not actually in changing minds. Your interest is in just in being provocative and clickbait, and that is dangerous and problematic for me as a black man, for another black man to be doing that in the community, because there are lots of folks who don't realize or recognize the foolishness and lack of depth of what he's saying, contextually. I mean, because I run out a lot of times. I'm like, what's the context of what he said? And like, here's history. And the fair history is black folks used to vote for Republicans. When Republicans were advocating policies that were in the interests of black people, they stopped getting black votes when that changed.
Yes, yes.
That's the real story.
But even on top of that, it was when white politicians actively tried to enact policies and political kind of whatever you want to call it to diminish black and brown communities. And so when
Yes.
they actively did those kinds of things, when it came to prisons and educational
Hmm.
systems and equal opportunity, when they are actively doing things that by definition left us out, that's when we're like, oh, we're not voting for this fool.
Not for this.
And we weren't signing up for that. And so when you consistently see this kind of pattern playing out for one political group versus another, what you're going to see is 90% or plus of black folks voting for one party. And real truth is, you still want straight up racism. And I have a number of black Republican friends, and I'll tell you the consistent theme I see is the willingness to ignore that piece because it's just to
Yes.
them, and you know this from psychology, that some people their blackness is not just as is not as salient as for
It isn't.
many of us, right? And so for
Yeah.
them, it's not a priority, and I get that.
Right.
That's their mental gymnastics they've
That's
gone
right.
through. It's just not a
Hmm.
priority. I get it.
Right.
But
Right.
with Stephen A. Smith, he professes his blackness is something that's a priority for him. And
Yes.
somehow he's encouraging other black folks to go vote for Republican as somehow as a strategy to get more influence. I'm like, There's plenty of black people who are voting Republican, and they have zero influence. They get embarrassed on TV.
all the time,
So it's
all
not
the time.
for lack of black folk. And so you're telling me, well, despite the signals telling us not to, you want us to continue to vote for a party that doesn't vote in our best interest, as if somehow that's going to make things better for us. And I'm like I said, it's just not, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And I mean, I know some folks as well who are black and who vote Republican. A lot of them are ex-military
Hmm.
or cops. And a lot of them are voting along the lines of gun rights. And maybe that's some of the story, which is a lot of the folks who look like you and I. And I think this was also true of the Latin community in the last election. They were voting on a fairly narrow band of issues, possibly only one,
Hmm.
either economic interest or stuff like gun rights. And they weren't looking more broadly. And maybe that's being a little bit unfair, but that was at least the people that I came in contact with. And then they did the gymnastics that Stephen A did, which was, I care about guns and the Democrats ain't shit either, And I was like, play that out for me. I'm like, how does that make sense? I'm like, if your issue is about guns and you want to keep your gun and bear it and wear it wherever you want to, you probably shouldn't vote for the Democrat Party because that's not what they are espousing. But when you talk about the metrics of policy that tend to be in the interests of most black and brown folks, I don't think there's a contest in that conversation based on what I know.
See, now you're making me remember something. I think sometimes when black folks come across Republicans, I don't know if he's a Republican, but let's say a Stephen A. Smith or other Republicans are out there, the Tim Scotts,
Hmm.
the Clarence Thomas. Their biggest beef with them isn't that they're Republican and that they have conservative values. That's not their
Mm-mm.
beef. Their beef oftentimes is what comes across as selfishness.
Yes,
Really focused on their own individual
their
self-interest
own individual, right?
and not the
Exactly,
interests of the community as a whole.
exactly,
And diminishing black folks, painting a broad brush of incompetence, of you kind of deserve what you get because of this and
exactly.
that kind of selfishness and pointing the finger at the black community as being somehow a detriment to themselves.
That's
Those are
right.
the things that we consistently get black folks frustrated about. We can talk about
Absolutely.
abortion, we can talk about educational system, we can talk about
Hmm.
crime, we can talk, but if in all those things you're pointing the finger at us as a whole
Yep.
and saying we're the problem,
Right. It's your fault that you are where you are, right? You're
just
in a
act it
deficit.
right. If you act it right.
Right. If you acted right. Well, and it's interesting because I mean, Clarence Thomas has basically said and lied his whole way through his career to say he wasn't affected or impacted by affirmative action. Bro, you got all of your degrees basically because you were an affirmative action baby. But
Mhm.
then you're going to go and dismantle the policy. And again, that then speaks to me about crabs in a barrel kind of an idea. You're like, well, burn the bridge because I want to be the only one who's here. That mentality, black folks going it alone in this country has never served black people well.
No.
Has never, and you named it when you said somebody like Stephen A, who goes down this trail more and more and more and more and more, eventually gets slapped down and they have no place to go. You know, the black community did not love OJ when he came back. We grudgingly accepted that he was a part of us, but at a distance. He's like, stay over there. Mm.
Remember you.
We remember you. And I believe you're seeing some of that with Stephen A, at least with regard to black athletes that, and Jalen Brown isn't the only one who's calling him out around, and this was before he even got into the political questions. It was like your hatred of black athletes has
Women,
based and black women. I mean, oh my God. I mean, Jesus Christ, talk about hatred of black women. I'm like, don't be mad because they don't like receding foreheads. I'm like, that's that, I mean, come on, bro. Come on. I mean, I'm like, clearly your receding forehead and your paycheck are not enough. Maybe you should work on that personality disorder you got. I mean, but you're seeing this, and I think a lot of the folks who are espousing the Tim Scotts, Clarence Thomases, Stephen A, who are espousing beliefs that are really incongruent and inconsistent with where the vast majority of black folks are, leave them on an island. The guy I know who's a Republican has now moved, he's moving to a state that's more amenable to his beliefs. And he talks about basically feeling shunned by his community, black folks, because of his beliefs. And I'm like, yeah, you're out of step with the vast majority. They don't want to hear what I have to say. No, they don't, because they've heard it and they don't believe
They've heard it and they'll believe it. And if you talk to people like they're not working and busting their asses, this it's going to come across as disrespect.
it. Exactly.
And the thing is, we can have philosophical values incongruence all day long. That's not the problem. But when you start making people the problem, you're pointing the finger at them as if they're a problem. That's the message that often is coming out of
That's the
that
message.
side of the conversation. And then we don't actually get to have the conversation about, well, if we approach this economic policy in this direction, this is the impact. And we can fundamentally disagree about that. But I think what you're seeing is that people don't even want to have that conversation because they've seen how it's already played out. So what we're responding to is not how things might be in the future, theoretically, it's how it already is
That
and how
already
it's already,
is.
and we've seen the pattern. So we don't need to have a conversation about how it could be, and if we just try this thing out, trickle down economics, blah blah blah, believe in the market, the market's going to do X, Y, Z. We're like, no, the market's never served us if you didn't have systems in place to provide protections.
Absolutely.
If you don't make people say, you know what, I'm going to go hire a more diverse tech, then that's not enough to say, hey, if you have a more diverse team, it's going to be more make you more money and be more functional and blah blah blah. If you don't make it a priority, they won't do
Don't
it.
make it a priority.
Right, even though
No,
they'll make them more money.
they'll make more money. Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. Which then gets you to a place of why is that? Because that's a dysfunctional belief system. And it does come back to the thing that we always come back to, which is white supremacy culture is interested in maintaining itself in spite of the fact that there is data information that suggests acting in a different way actually does the thing that you say you want, which is make money.
Well,
Right?
this is the piece here, and I think this is the difference for me, for my frustration. For some reason, there seems to be consistently a group of people who always wanna feel like they're doing better than others, or they should
Yes.
be doing better than others. And we
Yes.
have a system where we talk about increasing the size of the pie, abundance mindset, we can all eat,
Hmm.
that levels the playing field, and it doesn't give people a sense of, "I'm better than those folks over there."
Yeah.
If you level the playing field and make it easier for folks to eat and be profitable and do all the things, well, then I'm no longer special.
I'm not special.
And I'm like, what?
I'm not special.
Okay, I don't know what the issue is about, but I think some people, this is the problem in this white supremacy culture that we're talking about. There's always a group of people, a select group of people who are going to benefit. And so as long as they're benefiting, they're like, well, I don't see what the problem is. And I think what people are saying, whether it's politics, economics, educational systems, we're saying consistently, hey, there's no reason why we all can't benefit. And we're all God's children, or we're all Americans, or we're all humans with blood in our veins. Why can't we all benefit? And I think there's some people who want to have a sense that they're better, whether because of God chose them, they just think they are, or they grew up thinking they were the best. And I'm just like, I'm a firm believer that that's not true. And then maybe that's why I approach my politics and my work differently.
Look, I think that's probably very true. It's interesting, and I have no data to back this what I'm getting ready to say up at all. It's just kind of experience sitting in the therapy room with people. I would watch people make these very marginal distinctions between them and their siblings, or them and anybody else, right? And it made me think, KP, about uh, uh, this concept of the human is always looking to be unique, right? In some kind of way, which I think is a little bit is what you're talking about. In America, that plays out largely around economic lines, racial lines as well. But in capitalism, it's about how do I differentiate myself from you? It's by the money I have. Now, but I think maybe not all people, but I think maybe I wonder if a part of the human condition is that you are looking to be unique. And I can make an argument in the mammalian kingdom, the male with the biggest, the peacock with the biggest, beautiful, most beautiful plume might well get the lady peacock. I mean, so there may be some value in being unique, but maybe in the human species, we've taken it to extremes. And so that I think plays somewhat into it, but there are lots of ways you can be unique. We talked about earlier about, how you treat people. That can be a uniqueness. It doesn't always have to be on economic lines. And maybe a part of the issue is in capitalism, the only way to be unique that matters in this society is by how much money you got, how big a house you got, or how many houses you got, or what kind of car you're driving. So we've made our uniqueness about very material things and not about, as Dr. King said, the content of your character. Because most of the people who I really admire in this world, really good people, in my estimation. They care about other people. That's my value,
Mhm.
right? And so that's what makes them unique and really important and special in my mind. And I know people who got a lot of money, so it's not like I don't know rich people. I know lots of really rich people, but their richness has never been a thing that is attractive to me. One of my best friends growing up, his father was loaded. They had this big, beautiful house. We'd go and play at their house. We'd play football. Their yard was so big we could play football in the front yard. But what I remember most about his parents were one, how down to earth they were, and how kind they were. They'd be like, "Hey, Lawrence, you want to come to us to down with? We're going on a family outing to downtown Chicago. Why don't you come and we're going to bring a bunch of Jerry's friends. And we're going to take them down." That was kindness. That's what set them apart. Not that they had a big old beautiful house. And so I think when I listen to folks like Stephen A. and folks like Clarence Thomas, who are always espousing things that feel like they're about money and all that kind of stuff, as being a bit myopic in
Mhm.
terms of the overall sort of breadth of what makes people really great. And I can't, it's interesting. So if I put that paradigm on somebody like Stephen A., and I don't know Stephen A., obviously, I couldn't sit here and tell you that I think Stephen A. is a good person or a bad person because I don't know. And he's done some wonderful things.
Yeah,
I mean, he's given
probably
money
have.
to HBCUs. He's done some good stuff. So is he an overall horrible human being? I could not say that. Do I vehemently disagree with him about some of the things that he says and the views that he holds? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think some of those views are problematic for the community that I love, which is the Black community.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're reminding us, he's not he can't be all bad, right? And I just think that a lot of things that he professes and seems to be what he does seems to be not in the interest of anyone but himself and the audience that
Yes.
he's speaking to.
Yes.
And when he does that, I think in the end, it ends up being a detriment to us as a community as a whole.
Thousand
And
percent.
I just hate that because he's probably one of the most popular sportscasters that are out there as far as, and so hence why he makes all this money. I just feel that he gets lost in his attempt to try to appeal to a wide audience. And then I think that's in contrast to a lot of the folks who I've enjoyed, whether they're musicians, commentators,
Hmm.
intellectuals. They tend to first talk about their own, their own interests and ideas and how it impacts the Black community. And then they invite others. So when I think about MLK, I think who he was talking to initially was the Black folks.
Yeah.
And white folks said, "Oh, I really like what he has to say."
Hmm.
You know? And then they were invited to the barbecue,
Right.
and they was, "Okay, cool, you can come too." But his first audience, his first love was his family, his community,
Yeah.
and his people.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
beg to differ to show how Stephen A. in recent behavior has demonstrated that. And I'm not saying we necessarily are prioritizing Black folks over everyone else. What I'm saying is that you're speaking to the needs of the community that is a reflection of where you came from,
Hmm.
and it helps them invite other
That's right.
folks part of that story and that opportunity. I just I don't know, and I don't know if it's because he's getting older. You think because he's getting old, his mind ain't right?
I told you. It's that minoxidil going to the frontal lobe, man, is messing him up. You know, Stephen, I mean, I've listened to him, unfortunately, because he's on ESPN a lot. I've had to listen to him now on 20 years. He has always said problematic stuff about the Black community, about Black athletes. So I don't think this is new. For me, it doesn't feel new. It feels a part of a shtick that he has had since he came on. criticize the black athlete. That's a part of his shtick. And so this to me is just the next evolution of that in the political realm. Um, you know, because you're not, it's interesting. You're telling young black people or black folks to vote Republicans. You're not telling the broad world go vote Republican. You're particularly focusing on black people. That's interesting, right? Because if you really had great political aspirations, wouldn't you be speaking to your point, all of your audience going, here's why I believe you should be voting for Republican, right? Because that bullshit argument wouldn't sell. They've never been interested in, the Democrat Party hasn't been interested in your interests. So therefore you should vote for the Republicans. That's ignorance personified as far as I'm concerned. But that message won't sell to the wider white audience. So again, I think thematically it's a pretty consistent view that he has banked on, which is criticality of black communities to build your brand and make some money out of it.
Well, and it speaks to a bigger thing that has been coming out. I mean, first of all, it's been out for quite a long time. But in recent weeks, I've heard black commentators, but also white commentators speaking about the war in the black community, the
Mm,
war on brown communities, and the various different ways that we show up. That war has been going on for 400 years, right?
yes.
And
Yes.
so what it looks like for the Stephen A's of the world, who assumingly does some good things in the world, and but the sum, I think what I hear us talking about is the sum total of what his commentary, the impact that it has, the sum total and the patterns that we're seeing. So it's not about
Yeah.
one act versus another
No.
act, or can we find anything good from this man? That's not the question. It's what's the patterns? And overall, what have we seen over the last 5, 10, 15 years? And we see the same patterns of critical of black people, black athletes, black women. And you're like, after a while, you're just like, but what is it? What's your problem with black women? What's
Right.
your problem with black people? What did we
Black
do to
people.
you? And I understand, sometimes we don't treat our own very well, but
And we don't.
we're a diverse community.
Yeah. Right.
And there's plenty of
Like
us to
look, let's be
connect.
honest. We equal opportunity haters now. Let's be
That happens sometimes. But you can't tell me that there weren't folks in the black community who you couldn't have allied with, connected with, built some trust around to give you the kind of feedback to say, you know what, this ain't good for us. This isn't good for us.
well,
It's not good for
but
you.
man, you speak to something like, but that's profound what you just said. Because you said what you're doing is not good for us. You can't see my finger, I'm underlining it. Versus what is good for me. I would argue Stephen A is advocating for a very individualistic mindset and mentality. And we've talked a lot about this on this show. Black folks as a whole are a communal people, matrilineal, meaning, women at the center. And so the beliefs, that he is espousing, ironically, in some ways fit with what we were going to talk about trad life, that they're very traditional, I would say, white Western or white American views of community that are antithetical to what black folks in community, and I use that word small c community, have always been about, whether it's family, whether it's the broader community. Our survival has been about being connected to and with each other. And his advocacy is, yeah, dismantle all that shit. Go become a content creator, whatever it is you're going to do. And you do you and you make it on your own. That that has never been sufficient within the black community.
No, because every person I've ever uh, um, had a lot of respect for, even in their success, even when it seemed like they're out there doing their own thing, trying to move up the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you consistently see them say, not just when they get to the top, but along the
Yeah.
way,
Along
they
the way.
look back and say, "Come on," they pull other
Yep.
people up.
Pulling
That's
other
always
people
been
up.
a theme, right? And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I don't know Stephen A. Like you said earlier, I don't know who he's pulling up or not, but he sure is doing a lot of punching down, whole lot
Yeah.
of punching down.
Right.
So whoever he is bringing up, the punching down is over. It's overcorrected
Is overcorrecting. Right, exactly.
on up he might
Right.
be doing.
You throwing some wild haymakers, man. I'm like, I need you to take some. I'm like, it was okay when you was jabbing, but I'm like, now you over here doing Tyson taking left hooks and shit. I'm like, come on, bro, slow it down, slow your roll,
Slow it
slow
down,
your
man.
roll.
Slow it down. Well, hey, we actually spend most of our time talking about Stephen A, which is okay. We talking
Which is
about Stephen
okay.
A. It's okay. But so what I want to do is transition to our engagement card, and then we're gonna get to I'll use the rest of our time to talk about our last topic, which is the Kevin Hart roast that's on Netflix. So I'm gonna just pull one out here. Boom, here we go. Well, here we go. Here's a good one.
Stephen A.
When I was a child, I loved to play blank. When I was a child, I loved to play blank. I'm gonna go first.
You got it.
I'm gonna tell on myself a little bit.
Oh,
When I was a child in elementary school in California, we had this game we used to play, and basically the point of the game, and this is when we still did recess. We had recess, I think, 2 or 3
oh
times a
yeah,
day.
recess was the bomb.
And recess, especially recess after lunch, that was the longest. The other ones were like, I don't know,
Yeah, yeah,
20
yeah.
minutes long.
Like 15, 20 minutes. Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah, but lunch was like 30 or 40 minutes, and it was
Yeah.
included
Mm-hmm.
lunch, right?
Yeah.
Our food, and we come out the cafeteria, and we go, and someone having football, and we take that football. It'd be like, I don't know, 20 kids maybe? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And
I
I
think
was
I know
pretty
this one.
fast back then, but so I get the
Okay.
ball, and I run,
Uh.
run, until I was so tired that someone was eventually gonna catch me, and so I just throw the ball. And then someone else will get the ball, and they run, and I run after them and about to tackle them, and then they give up
Mm-hmm.
the ball. And that was
Mm-hmm.
that was the game. That was the rule that we weren't supposed to be doing it,
Okay.
but
All
the
right.
teachers be having conversations about what happened the
Right.
weekend,
They
so
would
they
wonder.
ignore what we were
Right.
doing. Do you know what the
Mm-hmm.
name of that game is called?
Kill the queer, if I remember correctly.
We called it Smear the Queer.
Okay. Okay.
You know, I didn't know anything. I mean, we were
Didn't know.
definitely a
I
homo
didn't know that until I was grown, right?
this is a messed up part of it. I grew up in a homophobic culture.
Mm-hmm.
We have no awareness. If we did have awareness, we'd been like, yeah, whatever. But now I just feel so like fortunate that we called it that name. But
Yeah.
I had so
Yeah.
much fun playing it because we run and run and
Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
get to show how fast I was and tackled other people and
Yeah.
no one ever got hurt. But man, the name was disrespectful. And so
It's a little foul in retrospect, right? But we go unlike Stephen A. We gonna forgive some 8 to 10 or 11-year-olds for not necessarily knowing the origin of that. You know.
well, I'm glad they didn't call Kill a Nigga or Smear the Nigga.
Right.
'Cause I
Right.
would have been on top of that shit from jump.
Right. You're
Like,
like,
who you smearing and who you
ex-
killing?
exactly. It's like
Don't
somebody
call her
gonna get hurt.
niggas.
Right. Somebody gonna get hurt up in this. You know. God. My favorite was I loved kickball.
Yes.
Kickball was the joint. Like I couldn't wait till we had recess and we could play kickball. I mean, it helped that I was pretty good at it. But I went to this Catholic school down, shout out to Sherman, Texas, and we had a basketball court that nobody ever used to play basketball. And the big excitement was you try to kick the ball over the long fence because it went out in the street. So that was everybody was trying to hit home runs. But if you kicked it too hard and pulled it, I was left-handed, so I'd kick with primarily my left. But if you pulled it and you kicked it into the neighbor's yard, you have to go get the ball through basically like these thorny bushes, which I don't think they were rose bushes, but like, and if you ever kicked it over there, everybody would just give you hell and be like, "I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. Can you go get no?" And you have to go, and you climbing through the thickets and all this kind of stuff to get the ball. It was like a prize when you got it. You're like, "I got the ball." You throwing it back and trying to figure your way back out. But I think what I loved about it was, I mean, you were playing together, you were just having fun, but there was something about and for me, I mean, if I'm honest, there was a sense of community. And because I was pretty good, I usually got to pick teams. Like I'd be a captain. And I often would pick girls and the less capable boy, because I always felt kind of bad that they would often get left out,
Right, right, right.
And look, but it wasn't completely like I was like that wonderful. Some of them girls were really good. I was like, y'all stupid. I'm like, that girl is better than 9, 9, 10 of you boys. So I'm like, you
Exactly.
come on, play with me, right? So
She's
I was like,
faster. She can catch the ball. Yeah.
fast as she could catch. I mean, all the stuff. I'm like, y'all don't know, man. I'm like, this girl can get it. I'm like, you come on, be on my team,
Janiqua was pretty good.
right? 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 I was
Well,
like,
hey, let's get on this Kevin Hart roast. Have you had opportunity to see it or see any clips on it yet?
I've seen clips. The only clip I ain't gonna lie. The only clip I really saw was Cat Williams going in,
Yeah, yeah.
which, and I'm not a huge Cat fan, and I know they have beef. I sort of appreciated him talking about the beef, and for Cat Williams, he was actually pretty funny. But I did love the one line where he said he was joking about you got a bunch of B or C list, D list comedians over here, and they showed the audience, most of whom and that made me laugh. I didn't even know who half these. I was like, literally, I was like, I don't know who any of these white people are. I didn't know who any of the black people were either. So there you go. So it had to be D-listers. But I was laughing. I was like, oh, he got jokes for everybody. I'm like, he calling out the white people. He calling out Kevin Hart. I'm like, that's crazy.
Well, I'll be honest. I felt the need to, if I was going to talk shit about this thing, even though I've seen some of the clips, I need to watch it. But like I mentioned
Hmm.
earlier, this thing's like 2.5, 3 hours long.
Yeah, that's about
It-
2 hours too many for me.
yeah, I
I
thought it
might
was,
I might be able to give Kevin Hart an hour
and
because
then
he ain't that funny either. So why am I gonna give him more of my time?
yeah, and then they had Tom Brady there, kind of doing this startup, and I don't know.
Hmm.
I felt like a little delicate because he started cussing and saying "fuck you" and "mf" for this, and now like, whoa,
Tom
hold up,
Brady did?
Tom Brady, well, slow down, bro.
What? Wow. Okay.
But then, but
That's
then,
that's different.
but then, like you said earlier, there were several white comedians there, and you like they say all kinds of foul things. I remember they said the one comedian at another roast. I mean, they're there to say the worst
Right.
kinds of things, right?
Hmm.
And I remember one guy, he was actually dying from diabetes. He ended up dying like 6 months later, but they made a joke about him dying, like, you gonna fall. And they were talking about Cheryl, what's her first last name? Cheryl something. She was on The View.
Cheryl Underwood.
Yeah, Underwood. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I actually like what she had to say, but a lot of these white, it was like, okay, we're gonna talk about George Floyd and make a joke about that. I mean, everything. And they said, "Oh, we're gonna say some racist stuff," and we talked I called her ahead of time. Like, it was almost like, when I hear white people say, "Well, I got permission to say nigger."
Right.
You
Right.
didn't hear
No,
from
you
me?
didn't. Not for me. Pop.
And I don't know, I think I was disappointed
Mm.
because, while Kevin Hart may not be my favorite comedian,
Mhm.
but he has been successful. He's made a point to do a lot of different things. I think he hires lots of black folks to do all kinds of stuff
Yeah.
across. He's opened doors for folks.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever seen something that's associated with him that I felt like it was so really deplorable. Because
Mm.
you go back and look at Richard Pryor's roast when they roasted his
Mhm.
ass, this shit was
Mhm.
funny.
Yes.
And then Richard came out later on and roasted all of them and roasted
All
them
them.
worse
Yeah.
than they roasted him,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
But and they said nigga, they said awful thing, but nothing to the detriment of
Mhm.
blackness and black people in a way
Yeah.
that I thought was not just borderline disrespectful, straight up disrespectful.
Can I ask you a question? Do you
Sure.
see a through line between what you saw in that and the previous conversation we just had about Stephen A?
Yes, it just was someone I didn't expect to see it from. I think and I and so Kevin, he's sitting there, Kevin Hart, he's sitting there. He wasn't well, he's doing what he always does. Why he has a mic while he's getting roasted is beyond me. Like, shut up. But he's getting roasted and he's talking and he's laughing through the entire thing. And I get it. There's comedians, including Dave Chappelle, who will say, we shouldn't have restrictions on what we say because, we should be able to, make fun of ourselves and not take ourselves so seriously. But Cheryl Underwood said this. It said, we need to be able to make fun of each other and have a good time and stuff, but we don't have to be disrespectful.
Disrespectful. Yeah.
And I
That's
think
what I
there
was
is a
thinking.
line. There
Yeah.
and I get it because I get what Dave Chappelle and others are saying. If you put too many guardrails on everything, you never get to really just say what needs to be said. Some things need to be said, and we're not saying it. And I get it, but I don't think that means everything needs to be said without
Yeah.
consequence. And I think
Yes.
that's the problem. Say what you want to say, but
Mhm.
kill Tony. I can't stand that Ooh, he's the one who was at the Republican National Convention and made those
Okay.
jokes about Puerto Rico being a island of trash or garbage.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
He's the one who made the joke about George Floyd's looking up, apparently from hell, looking up at us, and it's telling us he can't breathe. Come on.
Mm,
It has not been
that's
that many years for us to be making
yeah,
jokes about that kind
that's
of
too
stuff.
soon. Like
Well,
forever,
never.
forever it'll be too soon. Like that's in
But
very poor taste.
but that's the thing, right? Whether it's Stephen A. or Kill Tony or the guy who's a host, Sean something, I forget his last name, Gillis or Gills.
Hmm.
It just seems like it's a selfish endeavor. And they're all
Yes,
getting paid, they're all
getting
making
paid.
money. But in the end, it's a selfish endeavor to fulfill whatever they're trying to
Hmm.
fulfill for themselves.
Yeah,
And I don't know, I was disappointed in Kevin that I'm pretty sure he was one of the producers or something for it. It
yeah.
just
I'm sure he executive produced it and got a whole bunch of money out of it to do another Netflix live.
I don't know, just disappointed and slightly surprised because I feel like Kevin sometimes will do anything for a laugh, but I just never seen
Yes.
him do this stuff, this kind of
Yeah,
buffoonery.
part of the through line for me is funny because I was just about to say that line. Part of the through line for me with Kevin and Stephen A is I think they both kind of do the buffoonery piece, and there's a lot of catering to whiteness in Kevin Hart's work. So I guess him being okay with being this kind of object in that way makes sense for him. And it's funny that you talked about Richard Pryor, and I vaguely remember seeing that Richard Pryor risk a long, long, long time ago, and I could speak to it. And we were in a different era. I mean,
Mhm.
decorum was different.
Alright.
Richard Pryor clearly was an icon
Mhm.
that other comedians truly respected. And those roasts were really like, could you make Richard laugh? Right? I mean, you have to come with some good shit, sophisticated. I mean, the George Carlins of the world, like telling stories, but also being like, that was a good story. I mean, that was a good joke. I think comedy nowadays is, it's pretty cheap and uninteresting. You just come
Maybe
up and
that's why
be
I
like,
like Kill Tony 'cause, he has, several shows here locally. They've
okay,
basically taken over Downtown Comedy Club. It's called the,
okay,
Mothership,
okay.
and then they also have shows outside in the suburbs in, the HEB Center, and you're talking about hundreds and thousands of people showing up.
Hmm.
I don't get it, and I feel
Yeah.
like I mean, it's not the same. And I will say it's not the same because sometimes I watch movies that are geared towards women, and I'm like, "Okay, someone's gonna have to translate this for me because this is like
Right.
humor for and about women that I'm
Right.
probably not
It's
gonna get,
it's
and
not
I'm
it's
cool with
not
it."
it's not my jam. Yeah,
Right, but
exactly.
I'm cool with it, and someone will explain it, some joke
Hmm.
about periods or having babies
Right.
or,
Hmm.
cankles and
Right.
all this other stuff. I'm like, "Oh, okay," and then I get it, and I'm like,
Okay.
"Oh, yeah, it's
Yeah,
funny."
yeah. Okay, that's funny. Yeah.
I watched the Kill Tony stuff and the stuff that I saw last night, and I think I
Yeah,
don't need no
I
one
mean,
to explain it to me.
there's so much. Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much that's out there that's frankly trash from my perspective, and it's the lowest brow, not just of humor, of drama. It's just like it's throwaway. It's just trash. And so, you walk away and it's like, and again, even the little bit that I saw from Cat, I was like, okay, at least it referenced something real and tried to tell a story that for Cat Williams was actually pretty funny. Because most of his stuff I don't find funny at all. I actually thought his movies are horrible, they're trash. But this was actually, and what I liked about it was contextually thoughtful. It's like, me and you got beef. I don't know why they got me up here talking about you. And it's like, so I got a context for the story that you're telling. There's jokes that's coming off of it. I was like, okay, you put 5 minutes into thinking about what you were going to say versus just coming up here talking nonsense. Right. And even, I mean, I'll reference back to the Dave Chappelle, his last, and I get Dave is super homophobic. The last 30 minutes of his special was a story that was brilliant. It actually wasn't particularly funny, but it was brilliant. Like
He
how
is a
he pieced
storyteller.
that. Yeah, I mean, he's a great storyteller. And maybe the comedians that I loved were really good storytellers. Richard Pryor, I mean, the first album I ever heard, and probably the only comedy album I've ever really listened to was That Nigga's Crazy. That is the funniest album. See, because you know what I'm talking about. That nigga's crazy is hilarious because even for every little 3 minute diatribe is a story that has a middle, a beginning, a middle, and an end, which is the joke. And there's some jokes in between, but it comes full circle. And most of the stuff now is just like, you know, Ali Sadiq is actually one of my favorite comics right now
Yeah, yeah,
because
he's
I think
great.
he does a lot of the same stuff. He tells these very long stories that they're not even jokes in there. It's just the circumstances are hilarious, right? You're like, that's so stupid. It's funny. And every blue moon, he has a joke somewhere in there. But that to me is what I think of when I think of comedy. And so, the one-liner stuff has never particularly been interesting. But I do think to the broader point that you're raising, we are breaking down barriers in ways that I think are unhealthy. The fact that, nigga is every other word for every black comedian and now it's seeping into, brown and white comedians, I believe is problematic. And it's kind of lowbrow thinking and doesn't say anything. So I have a lot of pause and frankly, folks like Kat, you know, Kevin, and even Dave, even though Dave uses the word more like, well, that's not true. Dave uses nigga too broadly too. I give him some forgiveness because he tells great stories. I'm on the Richard Pryor. I went to Africa and I don't see no niggas. So you know.
You know, you're making me think about, Bill Cosby is in his twilight of his life. He's at the end
Hmm.
of his very controversial life.
Hmm.
But, in his 20 years ago, probably, maybe longer
Hmm.
before that, he had a lot to say about black folks. But
I
even
thought he
before
sure
that, he
did.
was very critical of Richard Pryor. He was critical of Eddie Murphy because
Hmm.
he's like, why are you cussing? He's
Yeah,
always
yeah, he
cussing.
did. Yep,
And he probably will be very critical of and having the same kind of conversation we're having right now
probably.
about what Kevin Hart's doing and stuff like that. But I would like to believe that I'm distinguishing myself from Richard Pryor. I mean, not from
From Bill
Bill
Cosby.
Cosby
You're not an old
because
curmudgeon.
yes, I mean, I like to believe to me, it's not about the cussing. To me, it's not about, anything other than it's been to the detriment. I mean, you're really calling, you're telling jokes that are actually someone maybe argue is harmful.
Harmful. Yeah.
And so I don't know when I listen to the Richard Pryor that he's doing comedy that is intended or not to be harmful. When I listen to Eddie Murphy and other people,
Hmm.
I don't see it as being harmful. And I think that's the difference. So whether you are about cursing or not cursing, using the N word or not, all that stuff, the question I'm asking is, who are you harming or not? And in these cases, I feel like what I hear us talking about is the harm that a show like Kevin Hart's roast that was supposed to be in
Yeah.
fun
Yeah.
is actually harmful.
Yeah, that's such a brilliant point that you're raising, and I think it is consistent with what we were talking about even around Stephen A. Is are you thinking about the potential harm that what you do can be doing to communities? I mean, I think here on this show, I think what we're trying to do is point out issues and uplift at the same time,
You got to
right?
uplift, right? You
I
got to
mean, you got
uplift.
to uplift, and so it's two for. I can call you out and I can try to point a thread to something that is uplifting for me, you, and community and doing it. I think that's a part of, in my mind, that's a part of the responsibility of being human.
Right. And some people are missing
And
that.
I think a whole lot of people are missing that. I can be self-interested, but also, as I say to my therapy patients all the time, I want you to be interested in yourself and take care of yourself emotionally, but to do so without causing harm to others as much as you can, right? So even that paradigm is never about you individualistically. It's about you in context, you in community,
Mm, right.
right? It's always in community.
Yeah, and I know people have a hard time with that, because when people come about community, they think about family, and they oftentimes
Hmm.
think about the people who've harmed them, right? And so if they think about their family who abused them, well, that's not my
Hmm.
community. They think about the world they may live in right now, and they feel like it's really harsh. And maybe if you're
Hmm.
LGBTQ, you've been
Yeah.
harmed and bullied by
Hmm.
a lot of folks, and so you're like, well, that's not my community. But when I think about community, I think about whether it's my family or my chosen community, the folks
Yeah.
who lift you up, who hold you and care for you when things are difficult and challenging. That's the community I'm talking about when we're talking about uplifting our community. And I think whether you're individualistic or more communal in your orientation, I think we can agree that lifting our community, ourselves, our communities is really important without having to diminish and push and punch down on other communities. And I think that's fundamentally been the challenge I have with a lot of things that we talked about today.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but hey, I'm gonna
Well said.
transition if you don't mind.
Okay.
Do our last card. It's our
Yes, sir.
engagement card. I'm sorry, celebration card. And I'm leaving here today with blank. You want to go first? Leaving here
Yeah.
today with blank.
I'm leaving here today with some peace. I purged, but beyond purging, I think you helped me to get to a place of peace around that last commentary that we just had, which is we can disagree and think about uplift,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I can disagree with you without being harmful. I can disagree with you and still try to buoy you and buoy me and try to bring uplift to the community. So yeah, that's what
I appreciate you saying that because I was on another KCOH is Houston radio station. And one of the things I remember talking about then, and I've said this to a bunch of my friends, I said, there's his brother, who's an older black man here in town, and he's a black Republican. And I don't agree with him on a lot of things. But one thing that we do agree on is I just need folks to get out my way and let me
I
do what I need to do
let me do my
for my
thing.
people, my
Yeah.
community. Let me be successful because the problem is that you're finding people are consistently, intentionally getting in the way of other folks.
Yeah.
And so I walk away with here saying, you don't have to agree on things, but we do need to get out of each other's way so we can get what we need done so we can eat and be prosperous. And I'm leaving here today with that sense of like really wanting to get things done. And if necessary, I might have to kind of nudge you out the way so I can get things done.
Mhm. Mhm.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. Because you in my
Can you
way.
move? Can you move? Excuse me.
Excuse me. Trying to move through, trying to live life.
Right, right, exactly. Right.
Well, hey, brother, it's
But
always
you can
good to
come
see
on with
you.
me though.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me, but you can
You
come with
come
me.
with me. There's the
Come
room.
with me.
I got
Right.
SUV. Come on through.
I got an SUV.
We got room. Well, hey, brother, it's
Love it.
always good to hang out with you and talk.
Always,
And
always, bro.
we only did two
Always.
topics today, but Stephen A had me filled with the spirit today.
Heat, man. Look, he had me on some heat. What I mean? So it bees that way sometimes.
It does. It does. All right, brother. Well, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. We're gonna have a little bit of a break next week, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks and continue the conversation, and we'll see what we'll riff and while black.
Rip
We'll see
about.
what we find to
Right.
talk about.
All
All
right,
right, man.
brother. Always good to
Good
see you.
seeing you, man.
Peace.